In this video, I'm going to show you stretches and exercises for your hips and legs that'll help you stay comfortable on your next airplane flight. Whether it's a long haul or a short haul flight, you're going to learn some standing and sitting exercises that'll help you stay comfortable for the entire flight. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to keep your body feeling good on your next airplane flight. So if you're ready, let's get ready to think right, move right, and feel right. All right, so let's start off with some exercises you can do while seated. These are really helpful when you are on a short flight, you're just hanging out. What happens is your legs will just die. They're not doing anything. Those muscles are not getting fed blood. You might start getting circulation problems. The way to actually pump blood through your body is to activate muscles. So if you want to start getting blood through your legs and you want everything here to feel better, you can start with a couple things. First is just doing simple calf raises. You may have even seen this in an airline magazine, but just trying to wake up your calf muscles will help pump blood up, which is going to help circulate things, which is going to help everything feel better. Just do that, feel a little bit of fatigue, then you can think about waking up your thigh muscles. So we're gonna start off first with the quads, all right? So you're stuck, right? When you're on a plane, you're just jammed up with the seat in front of you. So you can't really extend the knee like this unless you're maybe 2 feet tall. And since you're not 2 feet tall, what you can do instead is just have your feet planted and think about pushing away with your feet. So my feet are just stuck and I'm doing an isometric contraction. I'm trying to push my feet that way. I'm using these muscles, but I'm not getting anywhere. Okay, then you can just play around with the distance your feet are away from your butt so that your knees are going into a little more extension, and then you're doing the same thing, just doing different distances. You can come in really tight. Your heels don't have to stay on the ground, and you're just firing and using some of those muscles. Obviously, you're not going to be firing at maximum strength and popping your knees. You're just getting a little activity so that you feel those muscles firing just a little bit. And then this is my favorite one for my hamstrings. Before I jump into the next easy airplane exercise, drop me a comment down below and share any tips you have for staying more comfortable on your next flight. Everybody wants to see it. Thanks. Which is to just be seated, same position, same setup, but instead of pushing the feet away, I'm pulling the feet in towards myself. So then I'm feeling the hamstrings kick in, holding that contraction, feeling some activity here, and then relaxing. And then again, changing up the position, maybe moving my feet further away. I can even lean back in the chair if I can recline much, and then pull my feet back. Feeling those different configurations, because remember, the hamstrings need to be strong, they need to be functional when I'm in deep hip flexion, meaning here, this deeper angle, or this open angle. I want my hamstrings to be alive. I want them to be functional in all those positions. So you can just play around. You can also play around with foot position with these exercises in terms of going wider and then pulling in, or when you're doing the quads, pushing out in this position. All of those are good options. Whatever you have available when you're stuck in that little seat is totally fine. Then another simple one that you won't even be able to see is me sitting here squeezing my butt cheeks, and I don't mean with my hands. I mean, I'm actually just using my brain to send a fire signal to my butt. So I'm here and I'm just going squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Is now a good time to plug OnlyFans? Oh baby, yeah. Find us on OnlyFans. Just kidding, we don't have an OnlyFans, but we do have a Patreon. So while you're sitting there in your seat, you're just squeezing your butt cheeks, making sure you can feel them fire, and then relax. Fire, and then relax. All these exercises, you're just holding, you're feeling those muscles fire. You're not really moving a lot. You're just playing around with different positions, maybe leaning back, squeezing your butt cheeks, and making sure that those muscle fibers are able to function in different angles. So play around. You can be leaning to one side, leaning to the other side, forward, back, whatever. Just make sure those butt muscles are firing. Excuse me, Boney. And finally, when you want to use your lower abs and some of your hip flexor muscles, which are all falling asleep while you're sitting on the plane, you can just brace yourself here and then lift your knees up. Hopefully you have enough space in front of you. If you don't, you might be able to angle a little bit to the side so you aren't smashing into the tray table in front of you. And you're just holding this position, feeling your lower abs work, feeling a little bit of work from your hip flexors. You may find it easier to lean back. Bonnie, can you please move out of the way? If you lean back in your chair and your butt is more towards the front of your chair, you might find it a little more doable. If you're on a budget airline like, I don't know, Avianca or whatever, you may not be able to do this because your feet will probably be totally stuck under the seat in front of you. But if you have a little bit of space because you have extra miles and you're in first class or business class or whatever, then you can do this. You can just lift your legs up, feel your abs work, let them go and go, ah, yes. I'm getting in some muscle burn. You don't have to hold it forever, but you do want to feel like your muscles are doing some work. Do these exercises to light fatigue. You're not trying to get super buff like Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything like that. And just a quick plug to remind you to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on any future videos like this one. So let's get started with some of the stretches you can do on a longer flight. You're gonna wanna move somewhere where you have more space and you're in exit row or towards the back of the plane near the bathrooms, and you're just gonna be standing for these since you really don't have much space to be getting down on the floor. So you wanna hold on to something to help you actually balance yourself. You're gonna reach for your foot and ankle here and just hold this, pull the foot towards your butt. You're looking for a stretch down the front of your thigh. This is a quad stretch. When you're sitting, a lot of times you'll get really shortened up here. So just opening this up, telling the quad muscles to lengthen can help a lot. You're gonna hold this for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, even 2 minutes if you don't feel super awkward, and that's great. Just enjoy that stretch, do it for both sides. If you have a side that's obviously stiffer and tighter than the other side, then do some extra for that stiffer side. If you can't reach, if you're just like, oh, good Lord, and that hurts, then you can maybe use your armrest or use a chair or use whatever you have near you to just put your foot up on it, and then you can actually go into the stretch. You can kind of trick yourself into the stretch. Just make sure that you don't feel like it's a sharp pain in the knee. If it's really sharp, make sure you're using something that's a little bit lower, something that feels more doable, so that you can just get a gentle to medium stretch sensation. You're not trying to set any records for yourself. You're on a flight. You're trying to just keep yourself comfortable on the way to your destination. Another thing you can do is a hip flexor stretch. So that's very simple when you're standing, just holding on to something near you, maybe another passenger's head, and you're just gonna have 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. That foot that's in back, that's the side you're stretching. You're getting a stretch for the hip flexor here, keeping this butt cheek engaged, thinking about tucking your tailbone, keeping your abs engaged, and then getting a stretch right here along the hip flexor muscles here and a bit of the top of the thigh. That's gonna help you keep that hip nice and open, help you feel your glute squeeze, and that's just gonna be good in the long run. Then we can also work on hamstrings, because hamstrings get so stiff and so shortened from sitting all the time. So we could do this one of 2 ways. I'm gonna show you the way that I think is preferable because it just makes the hamstrings work a little bit more, and I'll show you another option in case you don't mind putting your dirty feet on the furniture. So first is the hinge. So you're just gonna stand on 1 foot. So you're gonna be biased on 1 foot. This foot's just helping me balance, the other foot is planted, and I'm gonna keep my weight generally more towards the front of my foot. That's how I like it. You may need to start with more weight on the heel towards the back of the foot, but over time I encourage you to keep more weight in the front because you'll just feel the better challenge. So holding onto a wall, holding onto something, you're gonna be going down, 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 feeling the stretch all through the hamstrings. Now, right now I have my knee straight. You can also do this with the knee slightly bent. That's okay. Just make sure you're feeling the stretch through there. If you are somebody who can hyperextend the knee, please do not hyperextend the knee. Then bend the knee a little bit and feel the stretch if you can get any stretch, because I bet you're a gymnast and your hamstrings are already super flexible and you don't need to be doing this anyway. But what you can be doing, everyone can be doing, is thinking about once you get to that lengthened position, not using help with your hand, and then feeling these muscles work to help you stand back up. So now we're actually stretching the hamstrings. We're getting them as lengthened as we can, and then we're gonna fire them. So we're strengthening them. So we're building strength at every length, which is something you might have heard on this channel before. Sounds like something that belongs on the OnlyFans. Strength at every length is not something that belongs on OnlyFans. It just is talking about flexibility and how to build strength as you are getting more flexible. You want to make sure that your muscles are able to lengthen and that you strengthen them at the same time. So you want to do this stretching and strengthening on both sides. So if you find that one side is obviously stiffer, obviously weaker, then make sure to spend some extra time on that stiffer, weaker side. You may want to do these as really like just gentle stretches where you're just hanging out as a static stretch, or you can do what I showed you earlier where you're static stretching and then using those muscles to stand back up. You figure out what works for you. You're on a flight. Again, you're not trying to set any personal records. You're just trying to keep your muscles happy while you are on the duration of this journey. Now let's also talk about what you can do if you are willing to put your foot up onto something. So if there is some sort of platform on the plane that you're on, or there's an empty seat and you don't mind putting your foot up on the seat, then you can go ahead and throw your foot up just like this. This knee is pretty straight, but it doesn't actually have to be locked or fully straight. And you're just going to start leaning forward. So you're hinging at the hips, feeling the stretch in your hamstrings. The reason I say you don't have to have it perfectly straight is because if you bend your knee a little bit, you can still get stretch in your hamstrings, and you can actually aim the stretch to hit different parts of your hamstrings depending on how bent your knee is. So you can feel free to explore that. And of course, as I've said before, I don't want you to hyperextend your knee if you're somebody like that. Again, if you can do that, you probably don't need to be doing a whole bunch of stretching. Again, make sure that you do both sides and go ahead and make sure you feel that stretch in the hamstring muscles themselves. You don't want to feel it at the knee joint. You want to feel like you're going to blow something out here. You may feel some concentrated stretch further up here. That's okay, but again, keep things milder. Don't go into anything that feels super intense or feels super sharp. Aim to get the stretch all along the belly of the muscle. It can be closer to the knee, it can be closer to the butt, but just don't make it like right behind the knee where it feels like it's gonna snap and pop. And then you can just hang out there 30 to 60 seconds and enjoy, relax, and just keep allowing yourself to sink a little bit deeper in there. And if you've watched some of my other videos on hamstring stretching, you can also use contract and relax techniques. If you haven't seen those videos, check the description box. I'll also try to link it up above so that you can watch those videos on how to stretch properly. And finally, let's talk about how to stretch your groin muscles. Yeah, let's talk about that. Hey, I want to take a moment to say a huge thanks to 3 people who donated money via PayPal. Mark sent $100 to say a big thanks to me for helping him with his hip and back pain with my videos. Thank you so much, Mark. George or Georgie sent me 30 euros and said thank you for helping him with his nightly shoulder pain. That's no small feat considering he's 95 kilograms, which, if my math is right, is something like 700 pounds. Or is that pesos? And finally, a big thanks to John for his $20 donation and his note that said, Hip Miracle Man. If you want to support me too, find me on Patreon or use the donate link you'll find in the description box, and don't forget to join my newsletter. Now let's get back to it. So your inner thigh muscles you can stretch pretty easily. You just need to hold on to something to balance. One leg is gonna bend, and then this is the side you're stretching. So you can do this by staying upright so that from the side view you're keeping vertical, or you can also flex at the hips, meaning you're bending at the hips, and still keep moving away, right? So you're moving away, you can flex, you can be vertical, whatever you want to do, but you're going to be feeling stretch through the inner thigh muscles. Explore. If you're standing up, does it feel like a tighter, more intense stretch? If you're just slightly bent over, does that feel like more of a challenge? Just figure out what feels like a good challenge for you. Don't go into anything that feels like it's pinching or popping or tearing, and definitely don't do anything that feels super intense on the knee. Take your time and allow your body to get used to it. Let those muscles just chill and relax and open up. And then of course, do this on both sides. So just find those angles that feel tough for those inner thigh muscles and enjoy. Get them to relax and lengthen, and then you can think about strengthening them when you're off this flight, because I don't think it's worth your time to do too much strength work when you could potentially hurt yourself, hurt your groin in the middle of the flight. What are you doing, Buster? Hold these stretches for 30 seconds to 2 minutes if you can. If you have a low threshold for being a little weird in public, then it's going to be more towards the shorter end. And if you don't mind being weird in public at all on an airplane, then hold for the full 2 minutes. Definitely do not try to do a long stretch session near the cockpit, or you may find yourself in a detention center.
I want you to get that black hat so you look like a pirate.
I'm filming at home and my son has decided that I need to wear the eye patch and the hat for the remainder of the video. So let's talk about some of the strengthening exercises we can also do. Because when you are on the flight for a long period of time, those muscles could really use some waking up. So when you're standing in the back, what you can do is some simple hamstring curls. So again, waking up those hamstring muscles, holding them, feeling the muscle fire, and ooh yeah, you might get some cramping, good for you, and then slowly back down. You can also play around with the angle, so you can hold the leg in a more abducted position, a little bit further from the other leg, or you can stay adducted, stay right in that more neutral position, and just go till you feel like, okay, yeah, I got some blood pumping there, and that feels fine. Make sure you do both sides. You know, count to 10 reps on each side, 20 reps, whatever works for you is a-okay with me. Again, we're not trying to set records. You're not trying to become Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're just trying to wake up some of those muscles while you're on the flight. Then you can work on strengthening the hip flexors, which we talked about earlier when you're sitting, but now that you're standing, you can actually do a little bit more like this. So you're lifting that leg up, holding it up. Think about getting the knee as close to your chest as possible so that these muscles can work. If you find that you can only get up here, then this is something you need to work on also not on the airplane. So when you get to your destination, when you get home, you want to start working on being able to control hip flexion. So you want to get up and keep being able to control higher and higher positions. So if that means you need to pause at this position and just stay low and then gradually get a little bit higher, that's a-okay. Take your time, there's no rush. You can also play with different angles, so you could have your leg a little more out to your side and go like that. You can even get real funky and bring it up and out and then straighten that leg, though I'm pretty sure your quads and your hip flexors are gonna cramp. But that's okay, make sure you do both sides, and then if you have a weaker side, do that weaker side, a few extra reps or even a full extra set. And finally, if you want to potentially break a sweat while you're on the flight and you want to really work your legs, you can do a split squat. So you can have 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, hold on to something to help you balance, and then you're going to be lowering yourself down towards the floor slowly and then back up. If you aren't sure that you have the strength to do this already, then you might not want to be doing this first time on the flight. But if you know you can do this, then this is a nice way to wake up all kinds of muscles depending on how you orient yourself. So, for example, if I want to work more on this front leg, I can work on going forward with my split squat, coming more onto the toes of the front foot. So the knee here, actually, the knee muscles have to work a lot harder, and the hip flexors back here have to stretch a lot more. I can also work on getting a stretch here and working the quads in a much more, I'd say, vulnerable position by doing a rear leg bias, so more weight back here as I do the split squat. So then I'm working here a lot and I have to be careful. So if you're not comfortable doing this off a plane, please don't do this for the first time on a plane. This is something to work on, think about, to increase control and strength at length of your quadriceps muscles, okay? Another thing you can do is when you're going down is think about just going straight down, squeezing the glutes, and just making it a more glute-centric exercise. So you have all these options of going more forward or more back or just straight down to kind of bias to get different parts of your lower body. And again, you can just do these to light fatigue. Maybe you do 5 on each side and that's good. You can also play around with foot position with a split squat. So you could be wider, you could be narrower, or if you want to get really spicy, you could even do a crossover, which, you know, could be fun depending on your flexibility, mobility, and strength in awkward positions. Again, do these to light fatigue. You're not trying to get super buff and build all that muscle. You're just trying to get some blood moving through your body. And I don't want you passing out on the plane because you overexerted yourself. Or because you consumed too many adult beverages and then overexerted yourself and then slumped over onto the unwitting passengers in the exit row. So I want to cover a couple of key tips that you can take away from this video. All the stretches and exercises that I've shown you in this video can be done beforehand so that you can prepare your body for the ordeal ahead. I highly recommend staying in motion before you get on your flight. It can be really tempting to sit down in the lounge area while everyone else is staring out the window, but if you stay moving, stay standing, maybe do some exercises, you'll feel better when you're actually on the flight. If I'm gonna be on a flight for 8 to 12 hours, sitting stuck in that chair, I am not in any rush to sit down in those uncomfortable chairs at the gate. So you'll often find me just fidgeting, walking back and forth, doing split squats, doing random exercises, dancing, just bouncing around to keep my body moving and trying to burn some of that energy that I'm not going to be able to burn while I'm sitting in that tin can in the sky. I will walk back and forth to the bathroom or the water fountain, making sure that our bottles are full and that I've peed out every last drop if it means that I'm doing something besides sitting in one of those chairs at the gate. While on the flight, one of my favorite exercises to do is the seated isometric hamstring curls that I showed you earlier in the video. When you're stuck in a seated position, you're literally crushing the life out of your hamstrings. So doing those little hamstring curls can really help keep blood moving through your hammies and help you stay more comfortable. I used to get really weird sensations of kind of instability in the back of my hip when I would sit for long periods, and the only thing that really would help would be using those hamstring curls and also strengthening my hamstrings when I'm not on the flight. But once you're stuck on the flight, you might as well be doing that to make sure that your hamstrings and your butt stay awake and alive. And now I want to ask you, what other tips do you have for surviving a long flight or a short flight? Drop me a comment down below. Also, please let me know how all these stretches and exercises feel for you and how they work for you on your next flight. For more free videos to help you feel right on your next trip, check these out here. If you found this video really useful, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/uprighthealth, and you can find my do-it-yourself programs at uprighthealth.com/DIY to find a program that'll help you rebuild your body at home. And as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.